hopefully you will be able to see that webinar or view this webinar, and then also be able to go back and say, okay, let me do that practice like what we did in the webinar, so you'll be able to get the most out of this. I do see a question from Norma. Absolutely, you know, I do want everyone to take part in this. I hope everyone is, like I said, you know, finds this useful. And again, when it is on the community, when it is when you do get recordings later on, hopefully it will do well for you to be able to get that, you know, this lesson, this information, not only for this course, but for later courses as well. And if you are even, you know, early on in your program and haven't even gotten to World Geography, hopefully, again, these lessons, the strategies that I'll talk about, will really help you throughout your experience at Penn Foster, to be able to look at a textbook, to be able to gather information from a textbook. Hopefully, these lessons will be helpful for you. That is always the hope and the expectation as we go through these webinars and particularly these exam strategy sessions. All right, does anyone have any questions as we get started? Looks like we're all pretty well set. And again, if you don't have a textbook, that's perfectly all right, because again, this recording will come around and you'll be able to hopefully get a lot out of it when you do get that. All right, so in terms of the in general, when we're looking at preparing for exams, there are a number of steps just to kind of get ourselves rolling and getting ourselves to understand the concepts within world geography. The first one, and I say this a lot to students both on the phone, on the community, and in emails, is the study guide is really a great first step. That as you are preparing for your study guide, or I'm sorry, preparing for the lesson, the study guide is a really useful tool to know the important details or important ideas within the lesson. The textbook is going to give a lot more details, and the exam questions themselves are taken more from the textbook than the study guide. So the textbook is absolutely essential and important. But in terms of starting to think about the most important concepts, to know what you really want to concentrate on within the textbook, reading the study guide first is going to be a really important part of being successful and understanding and learning the concepts within each lesson. The next part is looking over both the table of contents in the front of the book and also the index in the back of the book. When you are preparing for exams and even doing the self-checks or some of the exam review activities on the My Courses page, the table of contents and the index are going to be really useful in finding some of those key words within questions. And some of the examples that we'll go over today, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about with that, and show you exactly what you want to use and how you want to use both the table of contents and the index. As part of that, you also want to use your self-checks. In the study guides, the self-checks, they're not required, as I hope you all know, but they are we strongly encourage them, because going over those self-checks gives you a chance to say, even before the exam, okay, what am I understanding? What am I not understanding? What is it that I need maybe a little additional help understanding and looking at in the book and in the study guide? The answers are right there in the back of the study guide. So as you go through each lesson or go through each self-check, you can actually go back in the back of the study guide, check to make sure you have the answers correct. And if you don't, then it's easy enough to just go back in your study guide or back in your textbook to double check that information to say, okay, I didn't understand that concept, I didn't understand that part, let me go back in the textbook, let me go back in the study guide, and that way I'll get hopefully a much clearer understanding of what the concept was or what I need to make sure I understand. And then if you're still not understanding it, if you're still not quite understanding the concept or the question itself, then certainly give a call, go to the email, or use the community, and you can contact me and say, look, Paul, I'm not understanding this concept. Can you please help me out? I'm looking at this page. It's giving me this, this wording or this sentence is just not clear to me. Can you give me a little bit better help? And I'll do my best and hopefully be able to put you on the right track. So the self-check, I think, is really valuable. Again, a very valuable tool for you. The last part, and again, hopefully this is not a surprise to you to know that we do have preview exams on the My Courses page. I have the steps there just in case. But from the Take Exam page, you're able. There's a PDF file link that says preview the exam. You can save it or download it, and you have those 20 multiple choice questions that you're going to be tested on right there for you to be able to either have open on your computer. If you want to print it off, you then have access to those exam questions and can really do as a relaxed review of your textbook and a relaxed view of your look at your study guide before you take the exam for a grade. And again, that is a really nice tool and a real nice way to be able to look for your answers without having the stress of each question coming up one at a time when you're taking the exam for a grade. For students who have a little bit of test anxiety or don't like multiple choice exams, or standardized tests when you are a student, this is a really nice way to, again, practice, go through the exam in a really relaxed way, and be able to find the answers at your own pace. So that's really a nice way of working. Are there any questions as I move on? Any questions about these strategies? Again, I hope most of these are not new to you, but they are certainly nice to know that they're there, to know that they are there to help you. All right. All right, moving on. So let's try an example and sort of put some of these ideas to work. So the first question that I thought about asking, and again, a way of working with the strategies that we have, the question, how many Fortune 100 companies from 2008 came from the United States, Germany, France, and Japan? So that sounds like a pretty complicated question, but where do we want, or where do you think we're going to be able to find that answer? What would be a phrase or keywords that we would be able to look in the index? If you have a thought, if you have a comment, you can write in the under the question bar. What do you think is going to be a key word? Okay, seeing a couple of answers. Norma, you're absolutely right that we're going to be looking for the Fortune 100 companies. Each country themselves, United States, Germany, France, Japan, those are going to can be helpful. But since there are 4 of them, since you're asking about all 4 of them, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to look at each one in the index. So if you're able to look up in the index the Fortune 100 companies, and the index is in alphabetical order, so you can just be looking for the under Fortune. And when you're in the index, you're going to find that it's going to be on pages 26 and 27. So let me give you all a minute. If for those of you who have your textbooks, you can jump around in your textbook to be able to find pages 26 and 27 and be able to see where the answers are. Yeah, and those of you who don't have the textbooks, that's okay. Again, this is these strategies. This recording will be up online hopefully by the end of the day, and you'll get your recordings later. But definitely having these strategies are going to be hopefully awfully helpful for you when you are preparing for the exams, both in world geography and then later on for even other courses as well. So in the book, and again, we're looking at pages 26 and 27, we're showing that the United States has 31 of the top 100 companies. Germany has 13. France 10. And Japan has 8. So these are some of the top countries in the world that have those Fortune 100 companies. And clearly the United States has quite a few of them, has a third of the, or almost a third of the top 100 companies in the world. That's pretty darn impressive. That's pretty good. So that's part of the reason why the United States is has a fairly successful economy. That even though as a whole, the economy is not doing as great as we would like, but certainly the companies are largest companies are still doing well, and our wealth as a country is still doing pretty well as also, and that's a good indication of that as well, that we're showing so many companies still in the United States. Are there any questions about how we got to this point? That we got from the question, use the index to be able to find the answer. Are there any questions about how we did that? No? All right. Alrighty. So our next strategy is looking at the question and looking at the term of nationalism. So when a question like this comes up, we are clearly wanting to find the definition. And the index has a nice way of, particularly for a word like nationalism, that is going to be a word that is going to be used often in the textbook. And you'll find this for other words that are maybe not common, but certainly are words that's going to relate to a lot of different countries, perhaps to a lot of different places. You'll see a large number of references. And when you look in the index, a word like nationalism is going to have a lot of pages to reference. And one important piece of using the index and using it well with our textbook and with our exam is knowing how to how to kind of see the difference between or to be able to see what part of the pages or which page references we really want to use. So first off, wanted to give you all the nice definition that our book does use. So the pride in one's national identity and the belief that one's national interests are more important than all other interests. Typically, the phrase nationalism is used pretty negatively throughout culture and throughout history, really. That one country, considering countries like Germany during World War II, Italy and Japan also during World War II and World War I, countries that believe that because they are a superior nation having high amount of nationalism, that their interests and their desires more important than other countries, and taking that a step further, since that country is feeling superior, they want other people to view them as superior as well and conquer the people who they feel are inferior. So that's sort of how nationalism kind of takes a very negative step, not only within the borders of a country, but then spreading outward, saying, okay, you all are not as good as us as a nation. We are now going to take you over, and you will see us as your leaders and as a conquering nation. So to find nationalism, to find this term, when we look at the index, we see under nationalism, again, when you see there, you should have seen a rather long list of page references, but one of the first ones was, here in quotes, defined on page 21. So that's a clue. That clue should have told us, oh, well, this is going to be where the definition is going to be. This is where I'll be able to find that information. And this next point, when the index does specifically include the word defined, what might be further clues of where to find a term's definition? So again, this is a very clear way to be able to say, okay, this is the focus. This is where I'm going to be looking in the book to be able to find the best answer. Does anyone have questions about this strategy using the index? Looking back at either this question about nationalism, the last question about the Fortune 100 companies. Does anyone have any questions at this point? All right. Looks like we're all okay at this point. That's wonderful. All right. The next question I want to go over is how we're going to be able to use the table of contents, because there's going to be some questions that you're going to be asked on exams that the questions themselves and even the answers are not going to be specific enough or have clear words or clear important words that tell us, okay, we can look up this word, this phrase, and in the index we're going to find the answer. For a question like that, we want to use the table of contents. And the table of contents does not give as specific of pages as the index does. The table of contents gives the chapters, gives areas of the what sections, how the book itself is divided, but doesn't give very specific. So the search for words within a table of contents or exam answers in a table of contents takes a few steps. So to begin with, we have to flip over to the table of contents. And in the case of world geography, because the book is divided the way it is, we're able to kind of get a good idea of what chapter it's going to be in. So because it's divided geographically and divided by continents and by countries, we can gather a good idea of which chapter it's likely going to be. So in our table of contents, again, for those of you who have them, have your books, and also on that same level, because our lessons are divided by chapters, that gives us an even better way of narrowing down which chapters and what parts of the table of contents we're going to be looking in. And in this case, because the country or because the question references Russia, we can make a pretty good guess that Chapter 3, Russia and Neighboring Countries, will include something about this chapter or this question. Now, the second part of this index search is going to be figuring out which part of the lesson or which part of the chapter we're going to want to look at. And since the book is divided excuse me, between physical and human geography, that's something else we're going to have to think about. Which part of the geography are we going to want to look at? And in this case, because it's about the treatment of women, that is something about human geography. Those of you who were with me on our last webinar, we were going over human geography and gender roles, and gender equality was a big point, was a significant part of that human geography. So we can see that in human geography is starting on page 76 in our book. So in that case, we've now narrowed it to the point that we now get to move into the book. So now we go to page 76. Now, if we are just looking at the table of contents, we can see that page 76, or human geography itself, goes from pages 76 to 91. That's still a pretty good chunk, a pretty sizable chunk of the book, and to read that is going to take a little while. So if we look at human geography, we first want to look at the headings and see if those headings can give us any more clues about what section we can be looking at within human geography. And in the case of this question, we find one of the red headings. Can everyone see that? I can see it pretty well, but as I'm looking at it, I'm realizing that perhaps there might be some. Okay, everyone's looking okay on this. All right. That one of the headings is women's roles. So that is going to be a heading that we are likely going to be able to find that answer. And we've now taken a full lesson of over 100 pages and now narrowed it to just a few paragraphs. By using the table of contents, by using some of the clues within the question and within the textbook, we're able to now narrow it down. Now narrowed it down to 2 paragraphs. So that makes our lives significantly easier as we want to find this answer. And within that question, or within that exam, or textbook I should say, we find that within communist Russia, they are generally equal to men within society, and there were professions including doctors or types of doctors that actually became majority women because of the amount of education that women were receiving and excuse me, the amount that women were gaining equality within communist Russia. So has that made sense to people as we kind of went through both kinds of styles of looking for exams, looking for questions, and looking for the answers within our textbook? Does anyone have any further questions? Does anyone have any questions about lesson 1 or any questions about any of the concepts that we learned about that you guys want to go over or not sure about? Again, I'm accessible both on the community, by email, and I'm more than happy to go over any questions you guys have. Our next webinar is going to actually be going over the lesson 2 within World Geography, that I'll be able to we'll go over some of the more specific parts of East Asia and Southeast Asia concepts. I didn't go over that too much this time around, simply because we had gone through those with our previous webinars. Excuse me. All right, great. Well, thank you so much. You guys have a great great weekend, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you again.